What's up, guys, and welcome back to another episode. Today we are talking about Astria Ascending. At the time of recording, Astria sits at a mixed on Steam, but it only has 220 reviews, so, take that with a grain of salt. This game is done by a small team. If you don't know what that is, here's a quick look.
It's up to me.
Here I go. You'll see how smart I really am.
Now, not a lot extra to say here, I don't think, but yeah, that's what they had before, okay? Not a huge confidence boost, to say the least. But a good old-fashioned turn-based game was what I was looking for, and it was down to $6 on Steam, so here I am. I played Astria Ascending on the Steam Deck. I didn't even touch it on my regular PC. It was only on the Steam Deck. But even there, zero issues to report. It played wonderfully. No stutters, no frame drops, no real problems at all. Obviously, it's not a Twitch shooter or something where you would really notice that, but it was smooth, load times were pretty quick. All in all, performance was pretty darn good. It does have the check mark saying that it's good for the Steam Deck, and I agree. I think it absolutely is. When you first start up the game, the thing you're gonna notice is the absolutely breathtaking artwork. This game is gorgeous. The races are unique and different. The backgrounds are nothing short of incredible. I was blown away by how good this game looks. Look at this city. These character designs, these magic effects, even the movements are special. YouTube doesn't do this game justice when you see it through its compression, but if you get it off of that without YouTube compression, it jumps off the screen. Absolutely stunning. Right in line with the visuals, the music is awesome too. I enjoyed pretty much every piece I heard, from the music in town to the battle themes, to the boss music. All of it was really, really good stuff. So all of that came together really well. Story-wise, I was impressed with the setup and the way they used it to infuse emotion into their characters. The world felt like it was its own place. It had prejudice, it had norms, it felt lived in. All of it links to the idea where this group of people, one from each race, is chosen to represent their people for 3 years. During that time, they are the protectors of the land. They receive recognition and glory for their efforts. They come to be known as demigods, but they die at the end of those 3 years. As you follow the main campaign, it will peel back layers of your team, why they chose to join, what they were hoping for, what they are hoping for, what they were giving up, and what is the hardest for them to deal with, knowing that they won't be around. I found this angle incredibly compelling. Like being given a death sentence, I found myself wondering what I would give the most significance if that was me. How would others act around me? And who would be there if I was running out of time? It pushed me to enter a very introspective space. Considering these things, it was very, very interesting. And actually, I kind of love that. Watching the characters in your party go through that trauma was extremely impactful. It gives all the story moments hints or just an overarching feel of melancholy, knowing what awaits them at the end of their journey. These story moments are fully voiced in both English and Japanese. I thought the voiceover was done very well. The voice actors were good and lines were delivered pretty well. Unfortunately, I felt like those moments dragged pretty often, and I wanted to read ahead and skip through some dialogue, but you can't. You either have to watch the long story sections or skip them completely, which is kind of a bummer. You can skip through dialogue when it's talking to people as you walk around, but the cutscene style parts, no go. On the gameplay side of things, it's basically broken up into two parts: walking around town and delving into dungeons. When you're just cruising through the city spaces, it has a very unique vibe. And I like talking to everyone, picking up side quests felt pretty organic as it came through you simply talking to people. There's a mini game called J-Star, which is kind of an interesting hexagonal, like almost checkers type board game, which took a little bit to understand, but I did get a little obsessive once I got it. So yeah, actually kind of enjoyed that one a lot. One of the weird decisions though was that often stores or pathways to other areas in town are through the fore or background and can be incredibly hard to see, as they denote it only with like an arrow that blinks under your feet. Very hard to see a lot of times. There was a whole other section in the first town that I didn't find until like 8-ish hours in, because I had no idea you could go through the spot. When you talk to the NPCs, you might get a side quest, and those were mostly standard stuff, you know, kill a certain amount of enemies, collect a specific item, talk to this person, that type of thing. As you fight, you get XP for leveling up, which gives you the basic boost of HP, standard stat bumps, that kind of thing. But you also get a resource, they just put as SP, which is used in like a sphere grid type skill tree. These skill trees are unique to each character, and while some of the beginning felt pretty pointless, others were really awesome skills right away. All of them, as you get further in, can give you massive stat boosts that make a huge difference. One of the annoying things though is that the tree requires a stat orb to get those spheres on the grid for stat bumps. Now, that was a thing in Final Fantasy X where the sphere grid originated, but they are much harder to come by in Astria. So is SP, for that matter. I often did not have enough of either resource to move the skill tree along for like hours. On top of that, you also get classes, which is super cool. I love that kind of thing. Each character has their standard or main job that they start with. Then you get one additional main and sub job. Now, these take a while to unlock, and you need a specific material to do so. And those are not plentiful. So don't expect to be adding classes quickly. Each character has 3 to choose from, some of which might be available on other characters as well. Once unlocked, these classes offer their own skill trees, separate from the original one. So for example, when I take the poster character, who is like the tank, she has spear and shield, and I picked the barbarian type class as her second main job. Okay. Then she had a skill tree for her first class, as well as the barbarian class, both of which utilize the same resources. So while I like the new class and the option to upgrade both, it was very frustrating because movement on the trees was so slow. Felt like I wasn't getting anywhere. So both strong and weak points in that system. Once you mop up talking to everyone in town, you head off to the dungeon. Dungeons are laid out in almost Metroidvania style, but with a way crappier map. The dungeon map in this game is absolutely garbage. The only information it kind of gives you is which doorway might lead to another section. But it does so with this really obtuse kind of light lines that snake around before connecting to the other parcel. It's like, do you remember in school where one side of your paper was like a word or a phrase or something, and the other was like a picture that you had to draw a line to connect the ones that match, and they never were straight across, so you'd always have these lines squiggling around or whatever? That's what it reminded me of. It was clunky and almost completely unusable. As you go through the dungeons, you will see the enemies on the screen. It's not random battles, but all enemies show up as this kind of floating blue orb. You can do an attack to try and get a preemptive strike, but it's not a guarantee, even if you hit them. For most dungeons, once you beat the enemies, it will be gone until you leave the dungeon. When you enter into combat, you have 4 units out of the 8 that you have at the start, but you can freely change out the units, whether one at a time or even all 4 at once, but it does take the turn for whoever you had to do that. So you do have to be strategic. Enemy groups can be a single enemy up to at least 8 from what I've seen, and enemies have a really, really good variation, different strategies and things it takes to overcome them. The design was really pretty cool, and they all had their own unique movesets that you have to watch out for. Unfortunately, Astria Ascending struggled with balancing. Early on, I was wiping the floor with every single enemy. Then I hit a difficulty spike. So I went and grinded out some levels, got a strat for this new enemy, and then I was doing fine, worked my way through that area, then hit another huge spike. This time, the enemy, a standard mob, mind you, would stun lock my entire party to oblivion with one hit, and would do it all the time. So I would just sit there for 4 turns while all the monsters destroyed me. Sometimes they would even do the stun move again, and the amount of stun lock would increase. Super frustrating with that cheap, infuriating tactic. I grinded again. Eventually found an NPC who sold an accessory that would stop the stun, but it was crazy expensive. So I saved up enough to buy a few, got me through the area, and then I get to this boss I'm chasing around the map. I beat him once. He runs away. I chase him down, find him, beat him a second time. He runs away. Disappears on the map. I chase him, try to find him on the map, find him again, beat him again. He runs away again. Every time taking loads of my MP, which, just so you know, in a dungeon, your HP does refill after a battle, but your MP does not. So I'm using up all my items, chasing this dumb boss around, tons of the mob enemies. So I'm starting to avoid them, jumping over them, that kind of thing. Finally got to a point where I couldn't find the boss, and I accidentally went all the way back to town. So guess what? All of the mob enemies come back. I still don't know where the boss is. I spent all of my items, so I'm spending all of my money to refill the basic items. I was so frustrated, I just put it down. Now, I bet if I looked up a guide or something, I could get to the boss, and I'm sure I could beat him. At this point, I've freaking grinded so much. But the truth is, those random difficulty spikes out of nowhere, the unreasonable economy, the inability to speed up dialogue and story sequences, and being forced to fight the same boss over and over despite beating him each and every time, just came together to be too much for me. Now, I said earlier that the class system had both strong and weak points, and I think that is kind of the sentiment that fits this game all together. Within each system, it had parts of it that were really strong and that I liked a lot, but almost always there was some weak spot that would drag it down. Money economy, combat balance, SP economy, etc. It's tough because I do think there's a lot to like about Astria Ascending, from the gorgeous graphics to the interesting and unique turn-based combat to a really intriguing story. But the game as a whole is dragged down by unfinished systems or aspects not thoughtfully considered. This team is currently making Lost Helden, and I'm actually really interested and excited about it because after experiencing Astria Ascending, the feeling I leave with is, if this team gets another chance, I bet they get it. They were so close with this one. And I think that if they can learn from the mistakes they made here and grow in the strong areas, we're going to have one heck of a developer. All right, that's it for me, guys. If you made it this far, I hope that means you enjoyed the video. And if you did, spare me a second and click that like button. Super vital to the YouTube algorithm, and so thank you for doing that. If you're new around here, consider subscribing. I got new videos up every week. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you next time.